It is my complete pleasure today to have our guest on our podcast take note, pianist and Steinway artist Tao Lin. How are you doing today?
Good. Good evening, Jennifer. Thank you for having me.
And I hope you have a wonderful, hopeful weekend in the United States.
Yes, celebrations seem to be happening everywhere. Uh, More than
That's
just the United
wonderful.
States, it seems a worldwide celebration of some sort.
It looks like it. Yes, it does look like a worldwide celebration. And your Canadian neighbors definitely share the joy with you.
uh,
And
I
we're,
just
we're
want to mention one thing very quickly, but this is just kind of interesting. That as we are speaking right at this moment, South Florida, where I live right now, is actually being slammed by tropical storm Eta. So it's really dramatic outside, but I think everything is very stable. I don't expect any technical difficulties, but if something were to happen, at least everybody knows the reason for that.
no problem. No problem. So, Tao, you're originally from Shanghai, is that correct?
Yes.
A wonderful city that I had the honor to visit in 2018. I loved it. I was a bit surprised that it was plus 28 in March, but I didn't complain.
Yeah, the
Really nice.
temperature change can be quite dramatic over there. So
It was. I was in Beijing for the first week of my trip and had winter jacket, and
mhm.
then took a train 6 hours south and didn't need my jacket.
Into the tropics almost.
It is. It is. And we are so excited for your concert with us on Sunday, pardon me, Sunday at 6 o'clock Pacific. That's Sunday, November 15th. And that's celebrating the seventh anniversary of Muse West concerts.
Well,
And
congratulations.
thank you. Thank you so much. And we specially invited such a fantastic pianist to play for us virtually on that occasion. Our province has recently had more strict lockdown rules again, so live concerts look further and further apart.
Yeah.
um, so
Same
I
can here, I think.
same in Florida. Yes, I get that
Well, in
impression.
US overall, I think, unfortunately.
Yes, and I think Europe has gone into their second lockdown as well. So we are fortunate to have the technology to share music with each other.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yes.
I prefer to look at it positively.
Sure.
So you have had quite a journey from growing up in China to ending up teaching in the United States, but your musical journey started with mom and dad. Are they both pianists?
Yes. I guess I'll put it in such a way that for better or worse, they were not only both pianists, but they were both faculty professors at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. So as you can almost say that my career path was predetermined in a sense, but in a way it started. The story that they told me was that when I was a little toddler, I was sitting at the corner of the room when my mom was actually practicing the piano, and apparently the music she was working on was the second movement of the Pathetique Sonata by Beethoven, which is a very melancholy and emotional piece. And then she turned around and noticed that no, this is her story. She noticed that I was weeping. So she found out there might be some musical innate quality within me that's worth cultivating, and that apparently was the start of my musical journey, if you will.
That's wonderful. And we hear this quite often, um, that a lot of children who have music around them, they grow to love it. And to what extent do you think that growing up in a musical family can impact a child's musical development or their desire to pursue music later?
Was I think early acquaintance to art is always wonderful, and having music around really it's just that natural sense of familiarity with everything. So even though I was born in Shanghai, living in China all these years, but Western music never felt foreign. there's always music, not just piano music, but all sorts of classical music going on. So I think that's really important. It's almost same as reading novels or looking at paintings. The earlier you can start, the less a sense of unfamiliarness that can set in later on. So I
Mhm.
think it's like a lifelong friend of some sort.
That's a wonderful way to describe music because people have often asked me, I'm a full time grade five teacher, and they say, why do you make time for piano lessons still? Why do you still take lessons?
Mhm.
And I said, because this will be my friendship and companion for my whole life as well. You
Yeah,
know,
for me at least, I think music is such a sort of unique form that it's very fleeting. It never really stays in one place, right? A piece of music, you perform it and then it disappears basically until the next time somebody plays it again. But at the same time, it can strike such an emotional chord that I really feel, in the back of our mind, there's always a little space that we feel sort of completely alone, that it's such a private place that almost nothing or nobody can really enter, but somehow music can. And when you listen to a piece of music at the right time, at the right moment, it feels like the composer is really having that truly intimate conversation with you that really understand your sort of innermost thoughts. And to me, that's really the magic of music.
and that is, and that's such a beautiful description of being able to access that person's inner thoughts. And I have actually right in front of me, I'm currently working on the Fantasia in D minor.
Oh, oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Wonderful piece.
Oh,
And I feel like when we get to the Adagio section, that we have accessed his inner sadness of losing his mother fairly young.
absolutely.
We access everything that he puts into Pamina's arias.
Mhm.
And we also get to the louder sections where we get these repeated notes where he's insisting on Don Giovanni
Yes,
repenting,
yes, which is also in D minor. So that's
which is also in D minor. And I feel like I get to access this
mhm,
not as well as anyone else can play it. Like, even for a moment, I get to access this,
mhm,
and it's a real privilege.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's truly
when
amazing
did
to
you?
think that at least from what we know of Mozart, he was such a party boy and a happy person apparently, but he has such profound music that can
Truly,
like the D minor fantasy. So yeah, it's amazing.
truly, I agree. When did you know that you wanted to pursue music professionally and seriously? And did a lot of things in life change for you once you made that decision?
I'm not sure if I can pinpoint at a moment when I want to do this professionally. I think, in a sense, that was almost predetermined, like I mentioned before. Is that because in the Chinese system, it's still sort of that way. Is that once you are able to pass this really stringent audition process and get into the conservatory, and the conservatory, whether it's central or Shanghai, it runs from it's pre-elementary school division all the way
Yes,
to college. So if you're able to get into that system, that basically means you will be doing this as a profession,
that's
because
right.
it's very, very exclusive very exclusive training for that particular field. And that's was the system that I went through. But I can sort of pinpoint to the moment where I start to really love music, which is, I think, kind of different from when I started to start study music. Is that
Yes.
I think in my middle school years, I had a chance of just by chance, coincidentally, listen to the entire Dvorak New World Symphony. And for the first time, I just sat there really stunned by the music for the entire 45 minutes, couldn't really move. And from that moment on, I felt this is really what I would like to do.
I know that feeling because I had that when I was 6, and my
Oh,
mom
so you're way more advanced than I am.
my mom purchased, and this might say how old I am. My mom purchased a box set of cassettes of the Beethoven Complete Symphonies conducted by Karajan and the
Mm,
Berlin Phil.
sure.
And she saw me reading books all the time, and she said, maybe you should listen to music while you read your books. And lo and behold, she came into my room one day, and all I was doing was listening to these cassettes of Beethoven. um, and she just bought them at a garage sale down the street, and she lucked out because, I mean, this is an iconic recording,
Yes. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
great. Now, you've mentioned this very stringent audition process. Um, and I want to talk about auditions because you now teach and you mentor young pianists, and they go into some pretty stressful audition situations where they have to record for a competition, or there's a live audition for a college. And I really can't imagine the stress that people go through for auditions in China, because I think the level must be higher because there's just more people. What advice do you give young pianists about their auditions?
What I usually tell them, facing auditions or competitions, which really is something that's very similar circumstance,
Yes.
is that it's a psychological challenge. It's really not so much of a physical challenge because physically, at least hopefully, they are all ready to go. They are all competent, very often way beyond competent pianists. But the mental aspect is it can be tricky because it takes time to sort of instill a different mindset into performers. Is that you really want to look at every performance you gave, whether it's in audition setting or for an audience or for your grandparents or for a competition, just as another performance. And that's very difficult to do because you have to really block out the external noises. Because
Yes.
very often what makes us nervous is ourselves, really. It's not our surrounding, but we made our surrounding to be somehow hostile towards us.
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to just, if possible, to build up this ability to block it aside to say, well, it's just me, the instrument, and the music I want to play. I'm ready to play it. I know what I want to do with it, and I'm just going to do it. And one thing also that I always stress with them is that not take too seriously whether people liked your playing or not.
Oh, yes, it must be.
And that's very difficult because we want to be liked, right? That's human nature. But in artistic matters especially, it's impossible for everyone to like you. It is such a personal, subjective matter that I always like to tell people. I mean, after all these years, I play concerts or whatever. I can very often get three different kinds of reactions afterwards. Some people will come to me say, you're the greatest thing happened to us ever since sliced bread. We've never heard more astonishing, music performance. Wonderful, very much appreciated. And
Yes.
then some will say, nice, glad you're here. We enjoyed it. Basically translating to nothing particularly special. It's nice. It's a good concert. And then very, very occasionally, you will also get people's, maybe not to your face, but you maybe overhear or read a bad review of some sort saying like, oh, that was, yeah, it's nah. That.
Mhm.
And of course, it's not just me. Every performer has to deal with that. There's a famous book by Nicholas Slonimsky called musical invective or a chronicle of musical invective of some sort. It's a wonderful book. It's out of print now, but it collects all the most horrific reviews of all the greatest composers throughout history. So you see these really famous reviewers, critics, just bashing Beethoven, Debussy, Tchaikovsky, just basically saying they really should consider a career change.
They bashed Handel too.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Ever since there is music criticism, this business, there has been just people receiving bad reviews constantly from different people, right? So that is a certainty. So the mental fortitude is that you have to hopefully satisfy yourself that you can say, I have played it to my best ability. I have performed the piece exactly the way I prepared so I said what I want to say. Whether people enjoy what I say or not, that's out of my hands. So
That's
if you
true.
have, yeah, if you have these kind of mindset prepared, I think it will make these performance process a lot easier to handle. Because otherwise, it's a real tough professional life to go through.
I can imagine because you have to have thick skin
Yeah.
and not be offended by everything.
Mm.
That's very, very important advice.
And to make things even more difficult is that as performers, as artists, as musicians, we are taught and we should be super self-critical because
Yes,
that's the only way you can improve. And then so you need to be extremely self-critical, yet try to block out other people's criticism. So that is a very, very tricky dynamic to handle.
it is for
Yeah.
sure. Now, it's no secret that China has some incredible young talent in classical music these days. Um, some genuine engagement with the literature and some beautiful performances and technical abilities that I think all of us are like, I wish I was that young again. Now,
Trust me.
I feel the same way, but it's very interesting because there has been a difficult relationship sometimes between China and Western European art music, where this kind of music not only wasn't promoted, but it really wasn't allowed. So, how has the talent and the study of Western art music continued to thrive in China despite sort of a generation of no, you can't have Beethoven records at home, and no, you shouldn't have that Schubert record? How did that happen?
Well, historically, actually, there was just really one period
Mm,
where foreign influences were really suppressed and was intentionally eradicated, and that's infamously called the Cultural Revolution, but which lasts about a decade or so from the 1960s into the middle of 1970s. But besides that really traumatic period for not just musicians, but really for all the people in China, China in general has always been very welcoming towards foreign art. Shanghai in particular, especially during uh, I think Shanghai probably is achieving its second heyday now, but during its old heyday, that's back in the 1920s and 30s, it was always considered the Paris of the Orient, and had the same movie showing debut date as the Hollywood theaters, so they have the same dates. And many musicians, classical musicians like Fritz Kreisler, Rachmaninoff, Rubinstein, they actually performed in Shanghai. And Shanghai Conservatory was officially established in 1928. So
mm,
that tradition has been ongoing. And yes, that interruption was difficult. And I have personal stories to tell, not me, but my parents, my father taught piano during that time, and he was actually put into detention for over a year. And
my
to make the story
goodness.
even more interesting, I suppose, is that when I got into the conservatory later on, I actually practiced in the same practice room where he was held as a sort of like a prison cell. So it
Okay.
was really a kind of hollowing experience. But then once China got out of that period of alienating foreign cultures, classical music sort of just bounced back right away. And now, of course, you can see it's really thriving more than ever.
It is.
Yeah.
And I can I can just sense, having been to Shanghai, I can sense how it would have been in its 1920s heyday, and fashion and great food,
Yes.
and great culture, and um, we definitely have some genuine talent coming from China these days. And another question I have about that is, what kind of scores do the students in China have access to? Because I often see in Vancouver we have such a high Chinese population, as you probably know, that many Chinese friends I have teach piano, and I get to see their scores
Mhm.
that are from China, and we kind of tease each other about our auditions, and I tease them, and they say, well, you paid 20 times the price that I did. So I'm wondering, what kind of auditions do these students, what are they learning from in China? What publications do they have?
Well, that's a really interesting question because when I was there, when I was still there many years ago, it was so different from what they are able to access now. I would say today and as well in the past 10, 15 years, people can probably access to just about any edition, any score they have interest in. When I was there, it was rather difficult because there's no real foreign press, foreign publishing company allowed in. So what happens is that a couple of Chinese publishing companies copied off some of the editions from the West. And of course, we have no choice in what they decide to copy. So sometimes we'll have, luckily, Henley edition occasionally. And sometimes we'll have Schirmer, sometimes international or whatever. So it's just whatever we could get our hands on and we use it. So today, certainly, younger musicians, they have advantage in terms of accessibility to all material available.
That's wonderful. We are so excited for your program on Sunday. You've included a piece that's being very special to me since the movie The Pianist, where I won't give away the final scene. I'll let people watch it. It's an amazing Roman Polanski film from 2000. Um, you've chosen the G minor ballad to open the program, which is a cool way to open the program. Why did Chopin choose the title Ballad? And what does that title tell us about how certain sections of that piece or the whole piece should be conceived of and performed?
Well, the title Bala really sort of means some kind of storytelling in its original meaning. It's like telling a story, having multiple sections, but having an overarching storyline. And I think one of the reason people think that definition might be true relating to Chopin's ballad is that has been speculation, although there has never been confirmed. But the speculation was that he wrote four ballads, of course, and they were all based on this Polish poet named Adam Mickiewicz, his poetry. But like I said, this particular speculation has never been confirmed, but people have sort of more or less latched onto the validity of it. As far as I know, at least in terms of the third ballad, which is not what I'm playing, but in terms of the third ballad, there have been two rather concrete stories about its origin. One is that it was based on this poem called Undine, which is this water nymph. Again, a poem by Adam. But the other story is actually far more interesting and more practical, if you will, is that Chopin, of course, suffered tuberculosis most of his life and died.
Yes, he did.
And apparently, warmer weather helps that medical condition. So he and George Sand will spend winter months in Spain,
Yep,
on the island of
Mallorca.
Mallorca, yes, exactly. So apparently, the place they stayed, they stay in a monastery at one point, and outside of the bedroom there is this stone road, and every morning there is a donkey walking by. So it gives you this sort of rhythmic sound, up and down. Da, 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 da. So that's apparently explains the middle section of the third ballad that goes dee-ding, 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 that just repeats. And apparently that's the donkey steps.
No way, it sounds more beautiful than a donkey.
So, and apparently this story was actually in a way confirmed because I was playing that ballad at one concert and I told the story before I played it. And an audience member came to me afterwards. He said, that story was correct because I vacationed on Mallorca and been to that monastery. And they said that was where they stayed. So,
That's
that might be
incredible.
really the story of the piece.
Inspiration comes from different places.
Exactly. Exactly.
You've also included a few selections from Opus 10 and Opus 25, the Etudes, and as pianists, we are so lucky to have those 24 Etudes. They are stunning. How
Yes.
are these two sets different? How are Opus 10 and Opus 25 different?
Honestly, I'm not really sure why different opus numbers were given. Maybe it was for publishing purpose, but just in terms of technical difficulty, personally, I'm not really seeing one set as noticeably more difficult than the other.
Pretty similar. Yeah.
The only thing I can say about Chopin etudes is that I think Chopin etudes follow a more close step with the etudes of Czerny, meaning that, and that is a big difference from his etudes from Franz Liszt transcendental etudes. So for me, the biggest difference is that no, Czerny etudes, they are all composed in such a way that each etude really zero in on one specific technical challenge. Whether it's running notes, arpeggio, or thirds, or whatever it may be. And when you look over the 24 etudes of Chopin, you see that is also the technical purpose for the composition, that each etude clearly has one very specific problem, technical problem it's trying to solve.
Yes. What is
Contrasting, sorry, go ahead.
oh, what is the key structure of Opus 10 and Opus 25? Does he go through all the keys?
Not necessarily. It starts with the C major, of course, and then the second one is A minor. But then it goes on to other things, like the third one is E major. So it does, unlike his preludes, that's clearly trying to cover all the keys. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, so the difference is that in Franz Liszt etude, then he's throwing all different sorts of technical challenges all into one. So it's like a hodgepodge of everything. So in a sense, it's more diverse, but in a sense, it can also sometimes be more easily maneuverable because you are not stuck with one difficult pattern for too long. You see what I mean?
Because it goes between different
Yes.
challenges.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Now, these etudes, surely you played these as a younger piano student growing up, maybe in university. You're coming back to them now a little bit. How do you hear these differently? How do you play these etudes differently now? Because these are pretty well known. I'm sure you've learned these pieces, you've taught these pieces. How are they different for you now?
Uh, I think what's really wonderful about great music is that it's really they are suitable for all ages. So I always tell students or people I work with is that these pieces stay with you forever. There's never such a thing. Oh, these are for younger people and this is for adults. That never really. But of course, the purpose of studying them can differ at different stage of life. So yes, when I was much younger as a student, you're studying them maybe initially primarily as a technical challenge. You are really trying to solve whatever problem that's there. But these are such great concert works, really masterworks,
They
that they
are.
have so much musicality that they offer, that very soon you start to realize that you are probably the worst thing you can do to play Chopin etude is to make them sound like etudes.
I
So
agree, and we hear this a lot with young pianists where it sounds like hard work, but when you've heard someone play these, um, digging into what they offer as a piece of art, it's a completely different conception.
right. And I think that probably is a natural progress to go through. Initially, you look at something like that, you always treat it as, a technical challenge. But
Yes,
as you mature with the music, then, you look deeper into them, then you start to realize that these technical passages actually have a musical purpose. And
I,
that's when you start to maybe hear them a little bit differently.
I agree, and I will not forget the concert I heard where Louis Lortie played both sets of etudes and then afterwards played the preludes.
Oh my goodness. All in one concert.
One concert with a 25-minute intermission.
That is
That's something. That's
absolutely.
exceptional.
Mhm.
Um, you've chosen to close your program on Sunday with a piece by Ginastera. Tell us more about this composer Ginastera. I don't think many of our audience members have heard him before.
Well, Hina Stella was an Argentinian composer active during the early part of 20th century. He has very much widely been recognized as the father of classical music in that country. He has influenced later composers such as Astor Piazzolla and others. So these three works I will play, the Danzas Argentinas, came from his very early period. He wrote, I think it was like Opus 3 or Opus 5 or something. He wrote when he was in his early 20s. And in these three pieces, he kind of I don't want necessarily say imitate, but he used some other compositional styles from some of his contemporaries. So the first one is written in a bitonal style. So the left hand is primarily playing on black keys, while the right hand on the white keys. So this really interesting tonal clash. And of course, the composer that probably most often used bitonal technique was Bela Bartok, who was one of his contemporaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is a beautiful lyrical sort of tango-like slow dance. And the third one is very much a toccata-like technical showpiece, very energetic, and to my ears, sounding very much either like Prokofiev or Stravinsky, another two of his contemporaries. So I think it's really wonderful, contrasting three pieces.
Well, what a treat that we will have on Sunday to hear sort of the composer that us pianists claim as our own, Chopin, with Hinestera, who composed for orchestra and all sorts of things. That'll be wonderful. And our final question for you um, is how has chamber music been an important part of your life and your development as a pianist? Because you've done a lot of chamber music, and I've heard your Schubert recordings with violinists, and it's fantastic. So how has that been an important part of your musical journey or world?
Oh, well, thank you for the question. I think chamber music is so vital to all musicians, but for pianists in particular, because unlike other instruments, we are kind of living a more or less solitary solitude lifestyle. You know,
Yes, too much.
yes, and it's not just the social aspect of music making, but also in terms of the ability to objectively listen to yourself can be very difficult because very often we hear what we like to hear, and especially when we're so busy playing, it's very likely that we're only hearing something that's in our imagination rather than something that's practically coming out of our fingers, and a very, very practical way of solving that problem is actually playing chamber music, any kind of chamber music with other instruments or even with another pianist playing for hands. Is that right away you are forced, you have no choice but to listen to yourself critically and practically. So you have to stop imagining, you have to listen to it as it happens, whether in terms of balance or just how the piece is put together or whether everything is in correct proportion. So I think practically it is so essential for pianists to play chamber music as often as possible. And of course, chamber music also has some of the probably greatest repertoire in the
It,
literature.
it
So
does.
yeah, so
It
I
really
really think this
does.
is those great masterworks.
It does. I'm thinking of the Brahms F minor quintet.
Oh goodness, yeah. His
Stunning
trio.
piece.
Yes, his
50
trios.
minutes later. It's so good.
Yeah, everything, everything.
We are so grateful to have with us today Tao Lin, Steinway artist, and um, concert pianist and educator. We are really looking forward to the concert, which celebrates our 7th anniversary. Cannot believe that it's been 7 years. And we will be having our concert on the exact date 7 years ago that we had our very first concert.
I'm honored, truly
We're
honored.
we're honored too.
Thank you.
And tickets for the concert are available online on Eventbrite and our website. And we are really looking forward to that recital. We would like to thank our local Steinway Gallery, Tao Lin Music, for helping us with the microphone, and 2X Education for sponsoring our podcast. And if you have any questions for Tao Lin, you can put them in the comments and he can answer by email. We're going to have a little post concert reception after on Zoom after the concert to congratulate Tao on his wonderful recital for us. And this is a true honor. And we hope to have you here in real life.
Uh, Certainly looking forward to that. Yes, we're all hoping for that day to come as soon
One
as.
day, and then after the concert, we can go for real Sichuan 火锅.
Oh yes, oh, yes, Papa.
We should.
Love it. Yeah,
Um, and
thank
until then, we can enjoy hot pot over Zoom.
you. Yes.
But it has been a true pleasure to share musical thoughts today with Tao Lin. This is Jennifer West of Muse West Concerts reminding you to take note. Thanks everybody and see you Sunday for the concert.